Thank you for joining us. The UN's World Food Programme says supplies for tens of thousands of Sri Lankan refugees are running out. The organisation is warning that their current stocks will be gone by the end of April. The 20-year civil war between Tamil Tiger rebels and government troops has claimed over 60,000 lives and left 1 million more homeless. 223,000 people have fled their homes in the past year. Of those, 152,000 are living in temporary shelters in the eastern town of Batticaloa. 20,000 people in the southern Al-Jazeera region have been forced out of their homes. And since January of this year, more than 16,000 people have fled Sri Lanka in rickety boats heading to India. But it's a risky journey that many do not survive. From southern India, Rajesh Sundaram has this exclusive report.
Another daybreak. More Tamil refugees arrive on the southern tip of India, fleeing the conflict in Sri Lanka. 22 men, women and children. The youngest is just 42 days old. They've sold all their belongings to make the trip. These bags are all they have. After a 5-hour journey on the rough seas, dodging Indian and Sri Lankan naval patrols, they're exhausted but relieved.
We have lost everything in the conflict in Sri Lanka. All we have is our lives. We are not safe in Sri Lanka. Things are desperate. Why else would we risk the lives of our children on making such a dangerous trip?
This group is lucky to have made it to the mainland. Heightened naval presence means many boatmen are too nervous to bring the refugees to shore. For many of the Tamil refugees fleeing the conflict in Sri Lanka, these inhospitable sand mounds are their first point of contact in India. Many of them have to wait without food, water or shelter before they're rescued by fishermen or the Indian Coast Guard. Daisy Paulina, her daughter Tapita and husband Dabakumar were stranded with 26 other refugees on a sand mound for 3 days. Little Tapita got sick and her father tried to swim ashore for help, but he was too weak to make it and died.
We went from a Tamil Tiger-controlled area to an area controlled by the army. Men began to intimidate my husband, and when a grenade was thrown at our house, he decided to bring me and Tapita to India for safety. But he died trying to save my daughter, even before we made it to India.
At this police station, Irasaya Thabaratnam registers his family before they're sent to a transit camp.
I'm a fisherman from Jaffna. The Sri Lankan Navy does not allow us to fish. Have been unemployed for 8 months. Food is in short supply and very expensive. The security forces harass us every day.
Everyone here at the Mandapam transit camp for Sri Lankan refugees has a similar story to tell. Every day is a struggle as they have to queue up for their meager allowances and wait for roll calls. Movement outside the cramped quarters at the camp is restricted, but not many are complaining.
We are not looking for material benefits in this country. Therefore, it's the decision of the refugees to try and manage with what they get, work, earn, supplement the dole, and survive until you can go back to your country.
As the fighting in Sri Lanka intensifies, more people will be forced to risk their lives to come to India. The conditions here are not easy, but at least they'll be safe as they wait for the day they can return home. Rajesh Sundaram, Al-Jazeera, Tamil Nadu, India.
Russian rescue workers have found a survivor a day after a coal mining accident in which 106 people died. A gas explosion hundreds of meters underground caused the disaster, Russia's worst in more than a decade. Barbara Serra reports.
A day after the explosion, the search continues for the miners still missing nearly 300 meters underground. But the mission is being hampered by smoke, pockets of gas and collapsed sections of the tunnels. Also, it's as yet unclear if rescuers know the exact location of the missing miners and whether communication has been established. The Russian emergencies minister was dispatched from Moscow by President Putin to oversee the rescue operation. He admitted conditions were difficult.
We have approached the most difficult place, the most affected one. We are moving forward very carefully. There are problems as well. the explosion has actually destroyed the mine's internal communication system. This is a problem which makes our work more difficult.
Nearly 200 miners were working at the Ulyanovskaya mine in Siberia when it was devastated by a methane explosion on Monday morning. The ones rescued alive have been taken to a nearby hospital to receive treatment for their injuries. But more than half the miners involved in the accident have been confirmed dead. A makeshift morgue has been set up close by, where groups of relatives have gathered to identify their loved ones. The Ulyanovskaya incident is the latest in a string of mining disasters in Russia. With the death toll standing at more than 100, it is also the deadliest for a decade. Mining accidents are common in Russia due to poor safety standards and constructions which have not been updated since the fall of communism. But this mine is less than 5 years old and allegedly fitted with modern equipment. The explosion occurred during a safety inspection. It's still unclear what caused the blast, and the mining union leader said on Tuesday that human and natural factors always created potential for accidents underground. President Putin has ordered his cabinet to conduct an investigation into Monday's mine explosion as the search for the missing men continues. Barbara Serra, Al Jazeera.
6 months on from Thailand's military coup, the country remains committed to democracy. That's according to the unelected Prime Minister, General Surayut. Despite the promises, Selina Downs discovered that many Thais are frustrated by the slow pace of change.
When the tanks rolled into Bangkok in September, crowds of people welcomed them onto the streets. The military generals promised to punish Thaksin Shinawatra for alleged corruption and crimes against the king. But 6 months on, they've not yet found the former Prime Minister guilty of any such crimes, and the focus has shifted back to their own performance, prompting them to publicly answer their critics.
We spent only 12 days to return democracy to the Thai people. Things are slow because of the transformation from false democracy. To bring back the real democracy is not easy.
The enormity of the task is now beginning to dawn, a little too slowly for some. Thailand's rural poor have been camped here outside Government House for 10 days now. Rice farmer Sanat Lek Chan Ut and her niece walked from their home in drought-stricken Udon province. It took them a month. They say the government has abandoned them.
I don't have any money now. We are starving. We need help from the government.
Elsewhere on the streets of the capital, locals say business is slow.
The last government scored better. To be honest, economically it was better than now.
On the economic front, some say the government has proved to be its own worst enemy. It introduced capital controls to keep the baht low against the dollar and to help exporters. The move backfired, sending the stock market into a tailspin. It has since recovered. The same can't be said of southern Thailand, where hostilities between the Muslim and Buddhist communities show no signs of abating. Last week, a minibus carrying Buddhist men, women and children was ambushed. Its occupants shot dead. On Sunday, a boarding school was attacked. 3 Muslim boys were killed.
The government has implemented the reconciliation plan, which was adopted from His Majesty the King. They are understanding, access and development. We also insist on using negotiation over other solutions to the problems in the south.
But the Democrats, the main opposition party under Thaksin, aren't convinced. They told Al Jazeera the government must do better to resolve the security issues in the south and restore people's confidence in the government, especially as the country heads towards a referendum on a new constitution. The Thai people will soon begin debating a new constitution, and many want to see a return to democracy as quickly as possible. The Thai generals say the people will get their elections, just nobody is saying when. Selina Downs, Al Jazeera, Bangkok.
The United States' top nuclear negotiator is putting a positive spin on negotiations with North Korea. Christopher Hill says the 6-party talks, which have just concluded in Beijing, remain on track. That comes despite Pyongyang's refusal to attend until $25 million in frozen funds is transferred into its Chinese account. The Beijing talks are intended to chart progress on a deal made in February, under which North Korea agreed to shut down its main nuclear reactor in exchange for fuel and economic assistance.